Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations about money. Join your host, Lauren Williams, four-time Olympian turned financial planner, as her guests share their stories about how they manage money. We aim to help you own your personal money story and feel good talking about it. Lauren will teach you that money is a tool that can help you live the life you want. You should feel comfortable listening, sharing, and communicating about it. And now, here's your host, Lauren Williams.
Hello, and welcome to the Worth Listening podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and today I'm excited to have Jeron Mastrud here to share his money memoir with us. Jeron played 5 seasons in the NFL, but has been very careful not to let competing at an elite level define him. Instead, Jeron has always had multiple plan A's, so he had options to pivot in life. He is now the author of a best-selling book, Stand Tall: How to Lead from Within and Create High-Performance Teams. He is also the CEO of a health and wellness company based in Portland, Oregon called DEXA PDX. Today, Jeron and I discuss the firm foundation he started out with, which he attributes to having teachers as parents. He also shares how he handled money in college, how he managed his finances while bouncing around looking for an NFL team to call home, and the steps he took to create a smooth transition to life after sports. Let's listen as Jeron shares his money memoir with us. Jeron, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Lauren.
Let's start with just people getting to know a little bit about you. So generally, when anyone that comes on as an NFL player, people are like, oh my goodness, he did this, he did that, former NFL player. And there's all these accolades that people introduce athletes with. But I like to really get to the root of things and figure out, how does the athlete want to be introduced? Because it gets old for me being 4-time Olympian, 3-time medalist Lauren Williams. You know, I love that about myself, but I'd introduce myself differently. So tell me how you would introduce yourself.
Well, the first piece that I would use to introduce myself is I'm recently engaged, so I want to be introduced as a loving and caring husband soon, son of 2 teachers, brother of Kellen and Mackenzie. And then recently, I prefer to talk more about what I'm up to now rather than what I did in my past. And I'm an author of a best-selling book and the CEO of a health and wellness company based out of Portland, Oregon.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's roll backwards for a second. Son of 2 teachers and brother, let's go back to your childhood. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're from, how you grew up, and your first memory of money?
Oh, okay. So I was born in Roseburg, Oregon, which is a small town in Southern Oregon. When I was born there in 1987, it was a town of about 2,000-3,000 people. Now I think it's up to about 13. But I was born down there, small town, not around a lot other than just kind of playing outside. I got a younger brother and a younger sister that are close in age to me. My sister's in the Peace Corps right now. She's got 1 more year left in Africa. She's previously was working on Capitol Hill for 2 different government officials. So she's got a lot going on there. And my brother works with me in my company here. I know I kind of just skipped over, but after Roseburg, my dad, who was a football and track coach, decided to take a job at a new suburban school in Beaverton, Oregon, a suburb of Portland, and became the head football coach there. So we moved there, and I lived there throughout middle school and high school, and attended high school where he coached me and helped me, grew me into the man I am today, but ultimately, to get onto college as a football player and then start my transition towards the NFL from there. Both of my parents are also teachers. My mom was an elementary school teacher growing up, so she taught us to read and write, I'd say a little early, but helped groom the importance of homework at a young age so that by the time we got older, it was just something that we naturally did on our own. And then my dad was a strength and conditioning coach and a health teacher. So we had an in-house nutritionist and trainer at all times to make sure we were in tip-top shape.
That's really cool to have 2 teacher parents and, like you said, have the built-in kind of curriculum that most people want to work on at some point during your life. Like you said, that health and nutrition aspect of things is super important. So tell us a little bit, like with 2 teacher parents, what were they teaching you about money, finances? How was that handled in the household? Was there an allowance? What were you guys doing with money?
So that is something that kind of always came up or was on the back burner. I always heard a lot, as both being teachers at public school systems, I always heard them talking about how they weren't paid as much as they felt like they should in relation for the work they do, or as my mom being a first grade teacher, teaching kids to not just read, write, do math, science, history, and all those things, but just how to go to school for a whole day, how to get along with others, how to line up, all those types of things. So I always heard growing up as money not being necessarily a stressful thing, but just not being something we had in abundance and something that would limit our ability to go on extravagant vacations. Although we did go on quite a few, just we would go to the beach here or go over to Central Oregon or other places in Oregon, which was always fun. And we have a lot of great memories of that. But my first experience of hearing money in a more serious light was them talking about how they didn't make as much as others. So for me, I realized that it was something that you had to really budget and outline if you want to be able to do fun things and take your family to do fun things and make sure that everyone's getting the appropriate school supplies, athletic equipment, and proper nourishment and all those things at home and live in a comfortable house. You have to budget things right. And I feel like my parents did a great job of that.
Did you have any perceptions about value now that you're an adult and looking back on it and them feeling like their job was valuable, the service that they're providing was valuable, but their compensation was not valuable? Did you ever think about things like in that regard, like this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm being compensated for versus my value in the service I'm providing, and have any issues with that?
Yeah, my dad kind of taught me one thing of just every dollar, if you're willing to spend a dollar, make sure you consider what it's going towards and if you really need it and what it provides you. And then secondly, I did notice that they provide a lot of value and aren't getting what they're probably worth, remotely close to what it's worth. So it always made me realize I don't want to be a teacher because I want to do great things, help people, but I'd like to have it rewarded more appropriately and have my own terms and not be limited to a Christmas vacation here, a spring break there, and a summer break here. Although I did like that, so they could always be with us on our breaks growing up. I prefer to do my own thing.
Aha. One of the drawbacks of having teacher parents, summer vacation comes and parents also have summer vacation. So
yep, they're there.
They get to parent year round. Mm-hmm. What about allowance or pets? Was there any talk there of like responsibilities and the cost of things like that?
We never had a pet growing up. We finally got a dog at the house. My parents got my brother a dog. I was already in college at that point.
Because pets are expensive. They had to get rid of one kid to be over dog food.
I would say the primary reason we didn't get one was my dad didn't want a dog to pee in the yard and make it yellow. He is serious about his lawn and wants to be the envy of the block. So he doesn't want a dog messing that up.
Right.
It took him a while to break down and finally get one, and it worked out totally fine. So we did get one later on, but allowance wasn't something that we really had. My dad got me a car when I got my license so I could get myself around. Once I got football practice at school, then be able to drive out to basketball practice wherever my AAU team was playing, or go to a training facility, or go to my own doctor appointments or whatever.
Was it right when you were at 16?
No, it was about 6 months afterwards.
Okay, so like still in your 16th year.
Yeah, so he got me the car, but the gas was on me. So if you want to be able to go somewhere, you need to make a way to make that happen. So that was a subtle way of saying you need to get a job.
You need to get some work.
Or find a way to get some money. So I worked part-time at the Nike employee store, which is awesome because it's a place that only Nike employees can go and it's half off all Nike product. So I liked working there and getting to see the other players that would come through there. Usually all the teams that come play the Blazers come through there. So it's cool to see those guys and stuff like that. And then I also will power wash sidewalks especially during the summer because it's nice out and all you got to do is just clean off the sidewalk. And
where'd you get the power washer from? Then you have to like save up some money.
My dad bought me that. Well, he bought it because he wanted one too. So he could use that at home for all his stuff. But I also said I can do well with this thing. And I had someone that was a property manager and had endless lines of work at all the apartment complexes they managed. So started going to all those. And then I hired a few other people underneath me to help me out with it. And it was a nice little gig for the end of my high school and first couple of years of my college.
Right. So entrepreneurship kicked in at an early age then.
Oh, yeah. Didn't even realize it.
Thinking about college, how was that process? How was that talked about in your household with three children needing to be educated and you playing football? What kind of discussions were had around the cost associated with college?
To be honest, I don't remember a ton of conversation coming up about cost of college. I do remember them mentioning it, and that it is a costly thing. But in my head, I always knew that I'm getting a scholarship one way or another, whether it's with academics or with athletics. And I was able to earn scholarship opportunities in 3 different categories: very small college basketball, Division I football, or academically. I had multiple options there. So I was never too worried about it because I knew what I could do. But I do remember them having a few conversations about it. But I think they were less worried once they saw college interest in me as an athlete and felt like something good would happen. And with my dad's coaching background for, I can't remember how many years prior, at least 25 years of coaching prior to coaching me, put out multiple Division I and professional athletes in both track and football. So he was pretty aware of what that caliber of person looked like and felt like I had a good chance.
That's awesome to have that infrastructure around you and know. And I really love the part where you talk about the fact that academics was important. And you said, like, if sports didn't work out, I still had academics to get me where I needed to go. And I think the stereotype of the dumb jock and athletes not knowing a whole lot and just all these different perceptions that people place on us, it's really great to hear that education was at the forefront of your life. And it was a very viable option for you had football not been an option. So
I had one more thing. I also really liked the fact that I took my education seriously because it allowed me to explore other things that I'd be interested in. Obviously, I knew I was interested in football, interested in basketball, like working out, like health, like wellness, but as a way to look at business and different aspects of business, way to look at science, different aspects of science, way to look at Spanish and different aspects of that, and really explore other routes because I was told by multiple people and knew myself that your athletic career ends early. Could be very early, but it's going to be early. By your time you're 30, you probably need to go on to something else. So you better find something that you're interested in. So I use that as a time to figure out what are other things that I do like.
yeah, because there's so much more to a person than just their athletic career. And I think frequently you said we get pigeonholed when we excel at one thing as Jeron the athlete or this one particular thing. Is when you're elite in an area, it's like you can only do that thing, but there's so much more to every person. We're all very versatile people. So
Totally.
To be able to really focus on continuing that and creating that identity that was not just based in football is also a really cool thing. All right. So moving on to college, tell us a little bit about what your college experience was like, being off on your own, what you were thinking about at the age 18 to 21-ish when you were having, you're away and you can manage your own finances, but what was that like?
Yeah, so I felt like, once again, my parents set me up for success by forcing me to look at how much money I was bringing in and if that was enough money to fuel my car. That's a very small component of knowing your finances and understanding finances, but at least I had the responsibility placed on me and was given the tools and resources to, here's how you log into your bank account, here's how you check your bank account, and here's how you can kind of budget how much gas you're getting and look at the receipts and see how much it costs to fill up the car and look at all those things. And here's the cheapest gas stations in the area. All those things I looked at just to fuel my car up in high school. So having that background going off to college, and granted, yes, I was on my own and that's a big change. I was 2 time zones away. I was in a place that I didn't know anybody.
Where'd you go to school?
Kansas State. And like I said, I'm from Portland, Oregon. There's no other kids from Oregon out there. There was one kid from Washington and a few from California, which was cool, but it was a great family atmosphere there. So one piece that was great about Kansas State was they had a good family environment and helped take you under their wing and make you feel like you had family there, even though it wasn't your direct family members. It was people that were there for you no matter what type of questions you had. If you're having a bad day, felt homesick, whatever it was, that community really embraced me. And I liked that a lot about Kansas State. Going off on my own, I felt like it was just a transition that was already developed in high school and had good habits in high school, so that when I was on my own and managing my scholarship check and what's left over after these things are spent, how much you should save from what's left over to put away for a rainy day or help build a savings fund. I did learn early on that it's best to save when you're young, so you can let that compile year over year passively while you continue to do your thing. That was another piece that helped me grow throughout college and be ready for the next step.
Yeah. What about your friends during this time? So it sounds like you were a pretty focused college student in the sense that you had this budget and you were pretty aware financially, but your friends around you, what was that like? Did you guys have conversations about money?
I surrounded myself with other guys on the team that were also in my major, so in business. A lot of the guys that I spoke with were all relatively similar in terms of financial outlook, financial concern, and just understanding things. So no matter who they were, what position they were, where they were from, those people were kind of who I gravitated more on the team and spent my time with. I wish I could have had more of these conversations with other people that I never realized they just didn't understand some of the things that I thought were taught to you already or common sense or that you should have known. Could have been a better leader in that regard there. But the people that I surrounded myself with were kind of all on the same page, and it wasn't an intimidating conversation to have. It was, it didn't feel good if someone did come from money and you didn't. That would be something that was uncomfortable. But talking about where we were individually and where we could go and what we could do, I felt like those conversations helped me learn more about other components of life, because both my parents were teachers. So hearing from a kid that his parents are in the insurance industry, or hearing from a kid whose parents are in the cattle industry or agricultural industry and growing different crops. I mean, there's just so many things that people do across this country and across the world, that learning a little bit about all those things and further expanding on, hey, what else do I like, or what else am I interested in outside of football? That helped me grow even more there. And I hope I helped others grow off of things that I talked about with them.
Right. In case they offer any financial classes for the student body at large or for the student athletes?
I mean, my major was business and my concentration was in management administration, but I did have to take classes in marketing, classes in information systems, and classes in finance. So I had financial classes and kind of learned a lot of the ropes. However, it was more of, if you were going to be some sort of financial analyst type finances.
Right. Yeah. Not necessarily personal financing.
Yeah. Personal and family finance. I mean, just family budgeting and how to do all those things. But like I said, I felt like I had a good outlook on that from my parents, and just always played it safe, of leaning on the safer side and saving and not spending and working from there, as opposed to overspending and being stuck in a rut. That was just terrifying to me. So I always would lean on the safer side if I didn't know something, and then seek help if I really didn't know something.
Yes, I love it. Seek help if you don't know the answer. Go on, preach. Yes.
Totally. I'm a son of two teachers, and they always want kids in the class to raise their hand and help all the kids to understand things. So they always said, when you're in a class and don't understand something, ask the teacher. They want to help you. They want to tell you. And if you don't get what you want to know from them, ask somebody else, because somebody will help you. So especially a lot of football players and guys that want to just be all macho and think they know everything, have big egos. I mean, you don't know everything. You need help with things. And a lot of people are just afraid to ask for help in general.
Yeah, there's no stupid questions. That's one of those cliches out there that is so true. If you don't open your mouth and ask, like, you can't ever know the answer.
Exactly. And even if you think you got it all lined out and you don't have much of a question, it's safe to bounce ideas off of people.
Yes.
And there's no harm in that either, especially when you got a tight circle or some people you trust, which I felt like I did a good job of doing that as well. That, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm leaning towards. Is this good or bad? Since you know me and have my best interest.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that leads us right to the next question I was going to ask. What happened after college? So you had the opportunity to enter the NFL draft, and there's a lot that goes into that process that people don't know or understand. And part of it is building a team of people you trust. So just talk to us a little bit about what your draft experience was like and your team building.
For me, I didn't have much of a draft experience because I didn't get drafted, but I was invited to the combine, and I went to the combine, but wasn't able to perform anything there because I had just got off crutches the day prior. I ended my senior season in college with needing to get a surgery on my navicular bone in my foot ankle area. So that kept me from participating in any of the drills, and also alarmed teams of my current health and ability to play and perform at the next level. So despite being a first team All Big 12 tight end my senior year and doing really well in college, the injury outlook on me was not worth the risk of drafting. So I failed mostly every team's medical examinations and became an undrafted player, which was totally fine. A lot of guys go undrafted and end up doing great things, having great careers, which I felt like I did. And I ended up going to Tampa Bay unsigned. So I didn't watch most of the draft. I just kind of let it play and was outside shooting hoops, hoping to hear my name called, but didn't. And then I went to Tampa Bay as an undrafted free agent, was there for the NFL offseason, preseason, training camp. And then at the end of training camp, got released, went to the New England Patriots for a day and was there with Gronkowski and Hernandez, which was a nice room of talent, I thought at the time, and a great place that I wanted to be at. But they let me go the very next day because I had an injury and needed to make a roster move. So from there, I went down on to Miami and ended up spending 3 years. So I had a whirlwind for about 4 days of where am I going to live? Can I unpack this suitcase yet?
Right.
Who am I playing with? What are the plays? People want to come see me. No idea what's going on. I'm only 21, about to be 22.
Yeah, let's pause right there for a second, actually. I think that's a really good point. You said there's a lot that people don't know about this process. And so when you are undrafted and like I said, you end up on a team, is it like you get paid for the day or they just get your flight? And then, like you said, if you're only on the team for 2 or 3 days, then how does that process work? And are you making a living at all when you're bouncing around like that? And then there's also the moving expenses.
Luckily for me, I didn't have much but clothes in a suitcase. And my agent and dad were both telling me, don't buy a house yet, don't buy furniture, don't do any of those things. Get a fully furnished place or just live in an extended stay until we know you're going to be there, or else you'll buy all this stuff and then have to move it or just sell it and lose money. So I had a very conservative people behind me there in that regard. And then to answer your question, you don't get paid in the NFL except during the season. There's certain guys that have bonuses or workout bonuses in the off season, but you're talking about maybe the top 15% of the highest paid guys on the team. The rest probably don't have something like that. So most people, when they're looking at NFL contracts, NFL deals, they're seeing the big ones that come across ESPN that are noteworthy to talk about and newsworthy, whereas guys on minimum, which the minimum is still great, it's just not 10 million a year like most people probably think. And you get a little stressed out when you don't know if, I got cut from the preseason and you get a couple thousand for that whole time period, but that's nothing compared to the work you've put in during that time frame. The only time you're really rewarded for your work is during the season. So getting to the point of being on a roster for the regular season was my main goal and just biggest concern. And ultimately that happened the third week in Miami. I got elevated from the practice squad to the regular roster, and things changed from there of what my compensation would be. And then it kind of changed my whole look on what I need to be doing savings wise, spending wise, and all those things.
And it's still, like you said, even as undrafted participant, league minimum is a significant earning. It's more than most of America is going to earn in 4 or 5 years of their life. And so what was it like when you got that first paycheck? Like, wow, this is more money than I've seen. It's more than my power washing job could ever probably brought me all together. Did you have a moment of shock, even though you had a pretty solid financial background?
It was a moment of, hey, let's go to the mall. I wanted to get something, but like I was talking about earlier in our conversation, there was the same reaction, I would say, from mostly everyone on the team. And some guys take it a little more extreme and get more expensive items like cars, jewelry, homes, or go on expensive trips. Whereas I was just talking about getting a new shirt to wear out at night or a new pair of jeans or something pretty basic and vanilla. But from my childhood, I had that background of this may not come again. I didn't get my scholarship opportunity to go to college until 2 weeks before signing day. So I was always very appreciative of my opportunities and knew that I may not get another one. So hold this one until things come in. Don't treat this as something that's guaranteed to be coming. Treat it more as this was a one-time occurrence. And if it happens more, great. Then we can cross that bridge when it comes. But until then, hold on to this. So despite wanting to get a shirt, I kept it to one shirt and then left them all and held on to everything else. So my first experience was great and a great feeling to open that envelope and see the dollar amount on there and have the sense of I've made it. But I just realized ultimately that you just got cut by 2 other teams within the past week. Don't be thinking that this is going to be happening all the time.
Right. And so at that point, did you feel like you need someone to help you organize your finances, or had you already hired someone to help you as part of your financial entourage, or how did that process go?
In terms of financial entourage, I definitely saw and went through the bombardment from financial advisors that are either associated with the agency you're with, or are recommendations or referrals of other teammates you've had, or guys that are outside the facility trying to pick you up, or people kind of lurking in the wind or sending Facebook messages or whatever it is. They're definitely genuine people that had a great approach and people that I would have worked with. I just didn't feel like it was necessary at that time. My sole goal was, let's just save all these as they keep coming for this first year and continue to work towards making this a more permanent situation and focus on your play and continuing to grow as a player. I never played tight end until I went to college. So even though I was in the NFL, it was only my 5th season ever playing this position on a full-time basis. So I had a lot to learn in aspects that I need to grow in that regard. So I just knew that, hey, I can keep the money over here and we'll cross the bridge at the end of the season and evaluate where we're at. And then at that point, at the end of my rookie year, got a financial advisor to assist with where I was at and help me make some long-term and short-term investments.
How did you go about choosing the person that you chose?
The person that I chose was someone that I'd known since I was 11 years old. It was a kid's dad that was one of the first people I met when I moved to Beaverton. He had a son on my football team starting in that fall, and his other son was on my brother's football team. So my parents saw a lot of his parents. We all went to high school together, and I just always knew that he did well and was good at what he did. And I just always asked questions to him about finance, just things here and there. And it just was a comfortable situation because I knew this was someone that always had my best interest, always was there for me, always supported me. And I just felt like it was comfortable having all of those other people approach me, which isn't anyone's fault. It's just the nature of the game. But it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way or made me feel a little insecure about going with a financial advisor because I didn't understand what they were talking about necessarily. I knew they were smarter than me in that aspect. So I wanted to go with someone that, hey, I know they're smarter than me, but I know they have my best interest at heart. They would never try to trick me,
right,
or anything like that. They just want to help me out.
Did you make any mistakes during that process, or is there any mistakes in general that stand out to you from a monetary standpoint?
There were definitely unwise monetary expenditures, to say the least, or to put nicely. Times at restaurants or a bar, out having a good time and just maybe buy too much, or I kind of wish that I would have bought a few of the places that I lived in Miami and had a little more foresight on life after football and being able to rent these out and expanding a real estate portfolio at that time, which I knew was something good and something I should do. Didn't know how to go about it. Airbnb wasn't out at the time. And I didn't know that I would continue to play for more years. Whereas my dad and agent were only having me focus on right at this moment, your future is not guaranteed here, and you don't want to purchase a place and be stuck with it and have to move across the country, which I did to Oakland. And now who's managing this place? How are you running it? Can you get any rentals out of it? All those things were unknown. But looking back at it, I could be doing quite well if I would have had one of those 2 places I lived in Miami and was renting it out as a vacation place or a long-term rental. So that I would say is my biggest mistake, was not getting one of those places. But at the same time, I don't fault myself too hard for it because I made the best decision in the moment. But if I would have known things would have worked out the way they did, I could have made that move.
Yeah, those are always tough ones too. You look back and you say coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah. Everyone could look and be like, I wish I bought more Apple stock, or
right, exactly.
Yeah, everyone wishes that.
Don't we all? Right.
I wish I would have kept a place in Miami on the beach. Like, yeah, who doesn't? So.
All things considered, that's not too bad. And I think you bring up a good point too about being forward thinking and saying, I wish I would have had that to help me with the transition or create some financial stability during my transition. So let's talk a little bit about that. What happened when it came time to transition from sport to life after sport? What did that look like for you? Did the income fluctuate quite a bit? Sometimes it does. I think that's one of the biggest things that people come up against is, you have this great earning for a short period of time, and then you move on to something else, and the earning potential isn't as high initially as what it was that you were just doing. And so there's an adjustment period too, if you don't have the proper expenses, and if you're already living kind of beyond your means, this pay cut, if you will, really seems to sting when athletes are transitioning from sport to life after sport.
I had, I would say, an easier transition than most, or maybe right in the middle. I'd say there's guys that have great transitions. A lot of people, like you mentioned, a financial transition is something you're going through along with a career transition. And one of the biggest things, in my opinion, is you're leaving what some would think their identity is as a football player. Whereas we were talking about earlier, I was always looking at other things that I was interested in. Although it's not easy to no longer play football, and it's still not that easy, but it's a lot easier. I realized that I'm good at other things and want to do other things. And before I was even done, I played 2010, 11, and 12 in Miami. 2013, I started in Oakland. And then 2014, I went to training camp with the Bears. But prior to going to training camp, I started my business here in Portland. And I had that going. So I knew, hey, if this season doesn't go well, I can transition over to this and make things smooth and not be sitting there on the sidelines trying to train and get back into the league. I just was willing to accept that, hey, you did great. You did better than average. You did great for yourself. Now it's time to make the next move and go do something where scouts and general managers don't dictate if you're good or worthy. You can control your hours. You don't have to hit anybody or worry about any concussions or anything like that.
So you started that before you even finished playing?
Yeah, so I started that with my brother and one of his best friends here in Portland, and they ran it, and they were doing quite well throughout the time I was gone in training camp and doing great things throughout the rest of the fall when we first started, and treating a lot of players, developed a lot of great relationships. And, at the time I was 26 and they were both 23. So we were all really young, had a lot of energy, really ambitious, and still young and have energy, obviously, but they were really making moves. And I noticed that I'm not really training the way I should if I got a call to go join a team. And I'm not really helping them like I could and grow this business. And when I weighed the two things against each other, the NFL was looking like it was coming to an end, or it already had for me. Whereas this business could go on forever if we do it right and make the impact that we want to make.
Where did the idea for the business come from?
Well, throughout my time ascending through my football career, during high school, I had one knee surgery. During college, I had another knee surgery, and then ended with the ankle surgery. After my rookie year in Miami, I had a surgery, and I had just seen a lot of guys that had more talent than me, or were better players than me, or better prospects, or maybe had already gotten to the NFL, and then all of a sudden career ended because of an injury and not having the appropriate rehab or not having the right understanding or education. And I just realized I've seen these people, I've had my experiences, and I can only imagine all the people that I don't know about and haven't seen. And I'm sure everybody in every city could find somebody that was walking around saying, man, he was the greatest in high school, but he had that injury and didn't make it. So I wanted to be there for those people and do what I could to help get them back on track and restore their careers, so they weren't ending their career early because of an injury. They're ending their career because they were no longer good enough or wanted to retire. So the idea for my business was something that I was kind of growing throughout my entire career, that I always know I wanted to do something health and wellness. My dad was in that line of work, albeit people label him a teacher. He's teaching those things. And I try to preach a lot of those early body maintenance, injury prevention, nutrition, just overall health concepts to everybody we work with and the people I speak to.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool business, and it's something that you could be really connected to as an athlete. Frequently, as an athlete, people say, oh, what are you going to do now? You're going to coach, or what are you going to do now? You're going to commentate. And they once again kind of pigeonhole you and say, you got to funnel toward these couple of ideas. But there's many facets that all people make up, and there's also many gaps in the way that the industry is serving athletes. And so to be an athlete and know where there's a gap and be able to fill that gap, I think is a great entrepreneurial opportunity. And that was where I decided to start my business. It's the same sort of thing. It's like, how can I help athletes with this thing?
Oh, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what is the hardest thing you encountered on the road to entrepreneurship?
The first thing was the ups and the downs. Entrepreneurship, as you know, isn't always smooth sailing. But then again, I hadn't quite realized the correlation between my prior life as an athlete and what I was doing now. And once I implemented a lot of the things that I did as an athlete, because as you know, you don't win every game, you don't have the best workout every time, you get beat, you lose, you get injured, things happen, and you have to bounce back. And that's something that the top athletes do and have good resiliency and perseverance. And I felt like once I applied those things to my business and stopped stressing too much about the lows and stopped celebrating too many of the highs, just like I did as an athlete, once I implemented that, it made things a lot more smooth sailing and allowed me to stay more even keel and be a better leader of my team and help us get to the place we really want to go. I felt that all the time. I would say an external resource that I used, we were 4 months into our business, maybe 5, when I started working with a business mentor to help better align our goals with what we were doing, shore up our business plan, shore up our strategy, improve our sales and sales tactics, understand our price point, understand our value, understand who we can reach and talk to and how to talk to them, how to reach out to certain markets, certain groups, how to position yourself, how to be short and to the point, but powerful with those statements. All of those things she helped us get through really quickly. So there were a lot of quick ups and downs with her and going and applying them into our business, but it's no different than going through ups and downs in practice and workouts and then applying it to your competition or game and dealing with how did that work out and then coming back and reevaluating. So we went as far as to record sales calls, but every other place does too. Whenever you pop on the line here, this call may be recorded for training and quality assurance purposes.
You got that down. Did you work at a call center?
I've just heard it enough. I've been on too many calls.
Right.
You can do the same thing. So I started to record calls and review them just like I review practice film and game film to really look at myself objectively rather than subjectively and getting my feelings over, hey, that was wrong or that was bad. I never did that when I was being evaluated and critiqued as a football player. I allowed the coaching to occur. So why not allow this coaching to occur in my business life? And once I opened myself up there, it really opened a lot more doors and a lot more possibilities and made us feel less constrained and that the sky was more of the limit rather than we're just so stuck in this current situation. It helped me see the light and get through the early humps and then continue to grow from there.
I think that's one of the biggest lessons that people can learn is that if you played sports, that entrepreneurship is very similar to competing at a sport and really crafting and becoming an elite at a sport. It's about goal setting. It's about perseverance. It is about persistence. It's about showing up every day, even when you get kicked in the face. You lose the game, but there's still more games in the season. There's still the championship that is on the line. And if you can pursue entrepreneurship in the same way that you would pursue getting in shape and getting ready to compete at any particular sport, then you too can win the championship of entrepreneurship by being successful, sort of thing. All right. I want to wrap up with what I like to call the final sprint. And basically it's some rapid fire questions. You don't have to do one word answers, but just kind of off the beaten path sort of things and say whatever makes you feel good.
I like it.
All right. First question. Would you want $25 now or $50 worth of coupons that have to be redeemed at 5 different stores?
$50 coupons.
All right. You're gonna work for it. It's like, I'm going to get this savings. Best money habit?
Budgeting.
What's your worst money habit?
Not paying attention to the budget.
Budgeting is worth doing, people. Did you hear that? It's worth doing even if you don't get it right all the time.
Totally.
Yes, you got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Some water and a meal at Chipotle.
That's some very fancy water because Chipotle is only like $7 unless you get like 5 things.
I need to keep 10.
Okay, there we go. Keep 10. Keep 10.
Yeah.
The best thing about being an athlete?
The competitiveness.
Worst advice you've ever received?
Be afraid of failure.
Ooh, yeah. Failing is very, very necessary in order to be able to succeed.
For sure.
All right. Final question. Can you share with us one thing that you would like to improve about your finances in the upcoming year?
I hinted at it at the last one. I've kind of given an indication that things have always worked out well for me and been smooth sailing. But despite budgeting and conservative financial tactics, I still have moments where I take a lapse on the budget or have an impulse purchase. So I'm hoping to minimize those and eliminate times where I go over the budget, even if it's a certain amount that's not that much or not considered that much. Going over it is still going over it, and it's not a good practice to get in, and it's just a slippery slope from there. So want to reset myself a little bit and stay on track.
I love it. Persistence, not perfection.
There you go.
Got to stick to it, right?
I like it.
All right, Jeron, you have succeeded at completing the final sprint, and now you get to stand on the podium.
I like it.
You have won the medal. You are a champion. You already were, but now you are a champion of the Worth Listening podcast. So by being on the podium, this is your time to shine. Tell us all about what you have going on, how we can support you, where we can find you. This is your time to shout yourself out.
Yeah, you can find me at jeronmastrud.com is my personal website, JeronMastrud. It's where you can buy a signed copy of my book. If you don't want it signed and just want it delivered straight to you, you can get that from Amazon. The book is called Stand Tall, How to Lead from Within and Create High-Performance Teams. My business, if anyone's out here in the Portland area, we have DEXA PDX, where we offer DEXA scans, understand your body composition in 10 minutes or less, and get a fitness and health plan that's right for you. And then if anyone's injured and needs physical therapy, we're out here, Pacific Neurotherapy. You can find us at painfreein10days.com.
Awesome. I can't wait to see where life leads you next. Jeron, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Jeron's Money Memoir. Over 3,000 football players become eligible for the NFL draft each year. Yet, there are roughly 1,700 active players during an NFL season. And of course, these are not all rookies. Actually, a little over 250 of that 3,000 will actually be drafted. The odds of your name being called are small. Even when your name is called, the length of your career won't be very long. That's why it's important to have multiple plan A's. Now, I would venture to say that not many of my listeners are preparing for the NFL draft, but you may be pursuing something where the odds are not in your favor. That does not mean that you give up. It means that you set yourself up for success. Having multiple plan A's will give you the chance to fail at one thing, but succeed at another. Our word of the day, success. The dictionary says, the favorable or prosperous termination of attempts or endeavors, the accomplishment of one's goals. I say, success has various definitions, and you control the definition based on the goals you set. When in pursuit of something, there are two things that you can bring to the table: attitude and effort. These are two things you can control, and you get to decide this for every aspect of your life. So why not decide to bring great attitude and maximum effort to everything you do? Thanks for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode worth listening to. As always, if you have financial questions, you have suggestions for guests, or you would like to share your own money memoir, please contact us through our website, worth-listening.com.